Hello, grade 8 learner. Welcome to your video lesson in mathematics, where we will be discussing how to show congruence between two triangles. This is based on the K-12 curriculum learning competency, the learner illustrates triangle congruence. It's another great day to learn, so prepare your module, pen, and paper as you start watching and learning from this video lesson. Refer to your Quarter 3, Module 2 entitled Triangle Congruence for this lesson. In this example, we are given that triangle CBD is congruent to triangle CLD. We are going to name and mark corresponding congruent sides and angles in the figure. We do that by first observing the figure. To name corresponding parts, we must first identify the two triangles in the figure. We have triangle CBD and triangle CLD. Let us process what we know. Triangle congruence is defined when the vertices of two triangles can be paired such that their corresponding sides and angles are congruent. Note that vertices in the triangle are the points where any two sides of the triangle meet. Let us solve. We begin by first establishing the correspondence between the vertices of two triangles. Which vertices correspond or are paired in the two triangles given? If we are given that triangle CBD is congruent to triangle CLD, then the vertex C in triangle CBD is paired with vertex C in triangle CLD. Following that pattern, vertex B in triangle CBD is paired with vertex L in triangle CLD, while vertex D in triangle CBD is paired with vertex D in triangle CLD. Now that we know the corresponding vertices, let us name the corresponding congruent parts in both triangles, starting with the congruent sides. Take note that when naming the congruent sides, we follow the corresponding vertices. Thus, line segment CB in triangle CBD is congruent to line segment CL in triangle CLD. Notice that we begin the naming of the sides with the corresponding vertex C. Next, we name line segment BD, which is congruent to line segment LD. Note that we follow the corresponding vertices B and L and D. Finally, we name line segment CD, which is congruent to line segment CD. To mark the congruent pairs of sides, we use hash marks. For line segments, we use short line segments intersecting the sides. Notice that we use the same number of hash marks for congruent pairs. Thus, we have one hash mark for the congruent pair of line segments CB and CL, two hash marks for line segments BD and LD, and three hash marks for line segment CD, which we see is congruent to itself. After identifying the congruent pairs of sides, let us identify corresponding congruent pairs of angles in the two triangles. Just like in naming the sides, we name the pairs of angles by following the corresponding vertices. Thus, we name angle BCD in triangle CBD, which is congruent to angle LCD in triangle CLD. Since we can name angles using their vertices, especially when that vertex is not shared by two triangles, we name angle B, which is congruent to angle L. Finally, we name angle CDB, which is congruent to angle CDL. To mark congruent angles, we use curves as hash marks. Take note that the same number of curves identify the same congruent pair. Thus, one curve represents the congruent pairs of angles BCD and LCD. Two curves represent the congruent pair of angles B and L. And three curves represent the congruent pair of angles CDB and CDL. Let us state our conclusions. Given the triangle CBD is congruent to triangle CLD, we identified and marked with similar hash marks the following congruent pairs of sides. Line segment CB is congruent to line segment CL. Line segment BD is congruent to line segment LD. And line segment CD is congruent to line segment CD. We also identified and marked with similar hash marks the following congruent pairs of angles. Angle BCD is congruent to angle LCD. Angle B is congruent to angle L. And angle CDB is congruent to angle CDL. Congratulations for finishing this video lesson. Now apply what you've learned by answering the activities in the activity sheet. Happy learning! We'll see you again in our next video lesson.